Hello everyone, I'm your host Pavelas Versotskas, and this is Prometheus and the Ecosystem Community Call. We follow Prometheus Code of Conduct here, so please be nice to one another. This is being recorded and will be published on YouTube. Today we will be giving away Prometheus Fact to active participants. So in order to qualify, you just need to ask a question. Our co-host Matthias will help us randomly pick a person at the end of the meeting. As always, we go through questions at the end. We have quite a big agenda today, so let's start with Prometheus.
Hello, yes, so we have a release candidate of Prometheus 2.21, which is out for a week now. There will be at least a second release candidate, but there is currently a potential regression in the query time, so we are still investigating that. Unfortunately, I can reproduce it locally and I can reproduce it in my production environment, but not in PromBench yet. I think it may be because there aren't enough blocks or enough data yet that are loaded. But that release contains two new service discoveries. So the first one is Eureka. So this was a long time request from the community. So it's a pull request from 3 years ago. And there is another cloud provider, Etzner, which is also joining the party. And also in this release, we have fixed a bunch of features. We have added a bunch of features and fixes in the React UI, so the new UI of Prometheus. And I think it should be pretty close to be usable day to day for all your Prometheus work. So you should try it now and really try to use it a bit more and give us more feedback, because I think we are closer to having it really nice. And I think that's it. So we have also a long list of bug fixes in the release, some of them which were really annoying, like Prometheus which does not shut down when it's killed and that kind of things.
That is awesome. Thank you for an update. I think now Bartek wants to talk about Cortex and Thanos.
Yeah, I can cover both projects. So on the last KubeCon 2 weeks ago, we got kind of approved for a next CNCF stage. So you have sandbox, incubation, and graduated projects. So both Thanos and Cortex went really in the same moment into incubation stage. So it was kind of hard work to get there, kind of long process, but we are here. And what it gives us is essentially like more visibility. Like we have just more time on KubeCon nowadays. And also you can buy swag from shop from both Cortex and Thanos, and we'll be just more supported by the CNCF, so that's pretty awesome. And just the moment of this being kind of together is also kind of super nice. So yeah, I think this is a success for the Prometheus ecosystem.
Awesome, thank you. And Kamal wants to talk about newest Thanos release candidate.
Yeah, we have a new release candidate. It is 0.15, and it will be, if everything goes as expected, it will be released at the end of this week. We have a couple of nice highlights. First of all, we have a new component, a query frontend, which is based on Cortex query frontend. And now you can just like schedule your queries and parallelize your queries and cache the responses. Moreover, like we made loopback delta configurable for PromQL, so you can overwrite the default value for query. And this was kind of a fix for the gaps that we discovered depend on the steps that you have. And also now you can enable server-side encryption for AWS S3. And we also introduced an ability to limit the amount of samples that you fetch from the Thanos store. And this version also has all the updates from the latest Prometheus. And we have this chunk iterator improvements, whatnot. Other than that, we have a couple of more changes about logging, but I think Yash can talk about them. And we have pretty nice UI changes, but I don't see Prem in the meeting. Maybe Bartek can talk about them. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah, I don't think Prem is there. Prem, speak up if you're there. I'm asking as someone else, but I can take it from here. So, so yeah, this is kind of epic. Like he's a GSOC, Prem is GSOC student, and he added lots of additional UIs and improved existing UIs. Essentially, we built kind of a React app. So all those UIs are very reusable and very easily to extend, and also very easy to kind of, actually we use certain components for React Prometheus UI. So now we can also backport our improvements to Prometheus. So what we did, we built, the query UI on top of it, the rules UI that we have on the ruler. We also converted the block viewer, which is kind of super nice thing where you want to visualize what are the blocks you have in the storage. And we want to actually kind of contribute that back to the Prometheus as well, but the kind of React was a blocker, having React app. So now we have that ready. So we should be opening some PR soon. So that's pretty epic. And kind of we have also some status pages like build info and flags on most of the components. So we'll be kind of making sure that every Thanos component has this UI ready for debugging purposes. So, and really most of it, or like all of it, was done by the one person, Prem, which is amazing. And our mentors who are mentoring that, Gidrius and Lucas.
Awesome. And Yash, do you want to talk about logging changes? I think we can't hear you.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yep.
My name is Yash. For this, in which I was participating in this project of request logging for Thanos.
Could you maybe try turning off your video? Because it gets interrupted.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So let me restart again. Based on Thanos,
I think
uses a lot of.
We have interruptions again.
Okay.
And
so
it doesn't sound like connection error. Are you sure you're not touching the cable?
Okay, I guess once Yash figures out his microphone problems, we can go to Cortex.
yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, try.
Okay, try.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So give me 5 minutes. I will wrap it up in that time. So basically, there are a lot of internal APIs in Thanos. So basically, there are two major protocols that we use. One is HTTP and gRPC. So basically, I wrote a request logger for logging out all the request calls and the Thanos. So I got the HTTP call request logging merged in the previous release candidate for Thanos. And for the gRPC, most of the changes have been worked upon, and it should be merged in few days, I guess. So that was the update for the request logging. So I guess in the next update, people should get more idea about using request logging in Thanos. So that's it from my side.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we can switch to Cortex now.
So we have recently released Cortex 1.3 with some updates to the block engine, for example, flushing of the blocks or support for the live cluster migration between chunks and blocks and back if you need. Changes to the ruler. Now ruler is part of the single binary and it supports locally stored rules. For example, if you want to have them in the config map in Kubernetes. Changes in alert manager. Now the alert manager or you can configure multiple alert manager URLs, and the tenant's configuration is also persisted in the object store. And there are many other changes, of course, bug fixes. In the next release, we plan to mark the blocks engine as the production ready, which unfortunately means that we are going to remove experimental prefix from many command line options. So sorry for that. We have also introduced a suite of tools for converting chunks to blocks. We are currently running this in our setup, in our production cluster for converting all data to the blocks. And so far it seems to work pretty well. And we are also, among other things, working on adding shuffle sharding support on the read and write path. I think that's it from me.
What is the shuffle sharding?
So the idea is, well, Cortex is a multi-tenant system, and we don't want all components to handle all users, for example, queryers. So on the read path, when the query hits the query frontend, only a subset of queryers will be able to handle queries for specific user. And shuffle, this is basically sharding part, and shuffling means that it's a different set of queryers for different tenants, and it's randomized to avoid problems with one tenant having queries that would kill the querier. It doesn't affect all the users or tenants. Same goes for the write path, where the one tenant isn't pushing data to all the ingesters, but only a subset of ingesters.
Makes sense, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Now we have an update about timescale Prometheus from, I believe, Matt.
Yes, hi. So we've released the beta for the 0.1 release, which is obviously where the new kid on the block. So we actually have not yet had a full release, which is not pre-release. So in this release, we kind of improved our PromQL support and also added support for more SQL functions, more abilities to analyze the data. SQL, our next release is going to be the RC, so we're pretty much stable at this point in terms of APIs and functionality, and I think we should have the 0.1 release in about a month or so. So that's on the timescale Prometheus side. In terms of timescale observability, which is our kind of suite of Helm charts to bring up Prometheus, Grafana, and timescale all together. We've also had a release kind of along with the timescale Prometheus release, and we've renamed it to tabs. So that's the new name for that project. We're actively looking for people to contribute more tools to integrate into the Helm chart. So the idea here is to make it really easy for people to bring up a full open source observability stack. And so we're looking for both more tools to complement the suite of tools that we already have, as well as alternatives. So we would love to have contributions from other long-term storage providers to also integrate them as alternatives into tabs. The other thing worth mentioning is that over the summer, we had an intern working on the CLI version of this tool to complement the Helm charts. And I think it turned out pretty cool and makes a lot of things easier in terms of deploying this whole suite of tools together. So check it out and give us feedback, or feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, is welcome.
Cool. Thank you for your update. Yeah, I think we can move on to questions. I think Peter has a question in Google Doc. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, the question is if anyone is using Elastic as a remote storage option for Prometheus, and if you do, what is your experience? Thank you.
Anyone? Nobody uses Elastic. Yeah, it feels like nobody uses Elastic. Sorry, we can't help you.
No problem. Thanks anyway.
Cool. If anyone from like community or chat, anybody listening have any ideas around that, please just chat it. I think for now, let's move on to the next question is from Julian.
Yes, on the mailing list, so it looks like that on the E386 and that kind of architecture, so 32-bit architectures, because of the M mapping that we have introduced in 2.19, but also the mapping that we were already doing before, Prometheus is quite not working, at least in the version 2.0 on those 32-bit architectures. So I am asking the community if someone is still actually requiring those builds from us, or if we can just drop them officially from the Prometheus site. And then if you really need it, you have to build Prometheus on yourself, and then you are on your own, because it seems that behind a reasonably small scale, you can't use Prometheus on those architecture anyway.
I think most of the users using 32-bit are not on x86, but they're on ARM, like trying to run it on Raspberry Pis, basically, and that sort of thing. But I think in practice, you'd only have like 200-300 megs worth of data, even before we got to 219.
So I know that Loki is embedding Prometheus and still having i386 builds. I'm not sure if that counts as using Prometheus, but there is a use case for that.
No, that's this is specifically the Prometheus server itself. Like exporters can run just fine. You know, we'd always support i386 node exporter, Raspberry Pi, ARM node exporter, etc. It's the Prometheus server itself has a hard time running on 32-bit, any 32-bit architecture due to virtual memory limits. ARM and Raspbian specifically is even worse, because on 32-bit there's usually a kernel space, process space split for I/O, and the default in the kernel is 1 gig kernel, 3 gigs virtual space for process. Raspberry Pis build the kernel with a 2 gig split, so it's even more limited. So you can only have up to 2 gigabytes of process and M-mapped data.
But I guess like a lot of people nowadays try to run their own like Raspberry Pi Kubernetes clusters, and like I think Raspberry 4 now has like 8 gig version. So I feel like a lot of people at least play with that at home, and it's sort of that use case for hackers.
Yeah, so Raspberry Pi 3s and newer can actually run 64-bit OS, but historically Raspbian has been a 32-bit only option. They're finally starting to get to the point where there are beta releases for Raspberry Pi OS that are 64-bit.
Oh, that's cool. Cool, I think.
There's a comment actually there from someone in chat. Cyril says that as an ISP, they still have some i386 in production, including using Prometheus as a server on the i386. So I guess there's someone actually using Prometheus on x86 still. But the question is, at the high level, do we want to produce these binaries for extremely niche use cases that will be, have to work hard at looking can cause confusion, or do we just stop building them for Prometheus itself?
Yeah, I am wondering exactly what is the scale of those Prometheus servers then that you have, and how easy it would be for you to replace it by another virtual machine.
Yeah, I would also be interested in the actual underlying use case or the rationale for, like, is it just reusing old hardware for fun, or is this an actual constraint?
Cyril says, small use case, few metrics. And to Richie's question, good question. We are trying to remove those servers.
So we can help you.
We can give you an official email. Great.
Cool. I think, yeah, I guess it sort of answers the question. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat. So yeah, as we didn't have any community questions, we are not giving away any Prometheus fact today.
There are many questions on the doc.
On the doc? Did I miss something?
Yeah, we are copying them in the meantime.
Did I miss something?
Did you just refresh?
I guess I can start with mine.
Yeah, can you start?
We started having some discussions within the Prometheus team about the current list of community support options, and we've started investigating a couple of different community replacements for the basic email lists. One being the GitHub discussions feature, and the other being a discourse forum. And I was interested in getting feedback from the community on whether one or the other would be more or less interesting for the community. We're currently mostly considering a discourse forum because it has a bit more functionality and also integrates with the email better, which means we could actually use it as a whole replacement for the current Google Groups emails. And also because it's more of a forum system, there's a lot more topic and subtopic ability to organize different discussions. So, Prometheus questions and PromQL questions can go into one forum, and like exporter questions can go into other forums.
So my kind of thought is, having tried the GitHub discussions on Prometheus, one of our projects, it's really cool to not have these discussions in GitHub issues, but I think you're right in terms of it doesn't replace like mailing list or Slack or whatever. So I tend to agree on the side of having something else. Discord might be fine. I'm wondering, why can't we embrace like Thanos, for example, the CNCF Slack? Because a lot of people have that already, right?
It's not I consider it not a replacement for real-time chat. It's more of a replacement for the mailing lists.
Okay, got it. But then Discord seems kind of more in the
Discord.
realm of
Discourse.
Discourse. Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that also is fine, yeah. Okay, cool. Naming is hard.
Yes, the Discourse people also have given us a free enterprise account, which means we're not limited to the typical open source project free tier because the Discourse itself uses Prometheus.
The one thing is we lose this ability to turn issues into talk points on this GitHub thing, or vice versa, assuming they have a nice workflow for this.
It's limited because I believe it's on each discussion is on a project by project basis. So it's hard to move. You can't, and for sure you can't move an issue from Prometheus to Prometheus community. So it's kind of half baked from if you're a larger organization.
And also because discussions are a superset of issues, it's a one-way trip. So if people start using bug requests in the discussion, we would need to close them anyway. So close the discussion. So yeah, you can move issues to discussion, but not the other way around. So it would create like the problem in the opposite direction.
Keep in mind though that it's much more often that issues are filed, which turns out to be support requests, than we've got a support request that turns out to be a bug, because we get one of those, we get 5 to 10 a day. The other way, we get 1 to 2 a month.
Yes, but because the mailing list is really more difficult to reach, if it's on the same GitHub page, then I guess that we will get more of them.
Did we set up the new GitHub open an issue, like click here for support button?
Yes, we have that on the Prometheus main repository, and then you are redirected to the community page, I think.
Yeah, maybe
difference?
maybe we should make it more clear, instead of Prometheus community, make it help support in the title of that link.
Yeah, there is also a support.md that you can add in GitHub that will add extra features regarding that.
I'm not sure I've noticed any difference in volume of support requests landing on the issue tracker, but I haven't looked at that scientifically.
Cool, I guess we can move on to next question. Getting Prometheus flags, how to get them. So at the beginning, as I told you, basically, if you ask a question, you qualify for basically for Prometheus flag, and then Matthias will help us randomly pick a winner at the end of the meeting. And we have another question from Darshan. It's a really long one. We are using a gauge metric type to model app.
Actually, I think I moved Darshan to panelist, so maybe he want to
that's
ask himself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I basically have a. This might be a somewhat basic question, but what we have is we have the app health status that we're trying to monitor using Prometheus, and what we're using is a gauge metric type. So the metric name would be something like the app status, and it will have labels like the app name and the app status, which could be either healthy or not healthy. And the value is just a 1 to indicate that this is the value which is active. So for example, if the app is healthy, the metric will be app status. That is the metric name. The label will be app name, foobar, for example, and the app status will be healthy equal to 1. When it becomes unhealthy, the app status changes to app status equal to unhealthy, and the value becomes 1. So I'm like, is it okay to add more labels here? Like in a normal time series thingy, the cardinality problem hits because you have a lot of like long-lived series, I guess. But here, isn't it the case that when the app status is healthy, that's one series, and when the app status is not healthy, that's another series, and like we won't have the same problems here?
Yeah, I think that's fine because you have only 2 values, and you're right. The whole metric and the different labels you have in the app status will be duplicated, right? Because you have 2 versions, healthy and unhealthy. But still, it's only like 2x, so maybe that's okay, depending, how many of those you have. However, I would suggest something more like, since you have only 2 values and you don't use the value of the metric itself, then the usual thing what we do in Prometheus, you kind of describe your healthiness via the value of the metric itself. So instead of having label healthy and unhealthy, you can actually put that as a 0 or 1. And thanks to that, you can use variety of amazing, some Prometheus functions and, aggregations to actually have some meaningful, analytic, output when you want to play with it and just learn more. So, so we would suggest that, I think, as well.
Okay, makes sense. So also like one small follow-up question to that. What happens when you do not give a value for a particular label? Like how is that stored internally maybe?
You have to put value. What do you mean? There will be empty value then, which is not allowed, I think.
Oh, okay. Right.
It will not be exported if it doesn't have any value.
Depends. But basically, an empty label is the same thing as a missing label semantically. And generally, you want to avoid the situation where your labels are varying over time because that's tricky to deal with in PromQL. For the reasons that Bartek was just going through there, you don't want series appearing and disappearing because it's just annoying to deal with in PromQL. Instead, using a value 1, 0, much simpler.
Great, thank you.
Cool, I think that's it. Oh no, we have extending PromQL.
Yeah, Ganesh should be on the call now.
Let me add Ganesh to panelist. So he should be soon ready to speak. Yeah.
Cool.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, regarding the extending PromQL. So I just started on it this week. So I'm planning to gather use cases around what things are not possible currently with the PromQL currently, and maybe come up with a design doc to solve most of those use cases. So that's my current plan, and I was planning to open a GitHub issue to continue discussion on there. So currently I'm trying to focus on a particular use case about top K, where if you want to graph only fixed set of metrics for a time range, you cannot do that with the current PromQL, because at every evaluation timestamp, you'll get lots of metrics out there. But in general, I wanted to open up discussion on extending PromQL and gathering use cases.
Any more opinions around that?
How we can give you the feedback?
I will open up a GitHub issue, and maybe people can post their use cases in the GitHub issue, and we can continue the discussion there.
Maybe it makes sense to just create an empty issue now, so we have
exactly.
one URL
Yes.
which we can synchronize on now, and then you can flesh this out over the day or whatever.
Okay.
So we have that one point where everyone can sit on. But basically, the intention behind Ganesh saying this is to invite more thoughts, comments, anything. Of course, as per the last Dev Summit, we will look at extending PromQL from first principles, and obviously this means looking at use cases and such. So everyone is more than invited to voice their opinion about what would be nice or useful or bad or whatever.
I just opened an issue. The number is 7878 without any description, but I'll add some description there.
Cool, we can add the link to the doc for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, GitHub is being slow. I'll copy it over in a second. Yep, there we go. So the rallying point for this is now in the meeting notes for anyone interested.
Cool, I think this is the last question. Let me quickly take a look at the chat. Yeah, chat seems to be empty. Yeah, so Matthias, do you want to announce the winner?
I think we only had one, if I'm not mistaken. Only one question. So Darshan, you kind of are the winner this case.
Yeah, congrats. You can ping me on TNTF Slack or somewhere, Twitter, whatever. Yeah, I'll send you the code and you'll get your swag. Congrats. And yeah, this is it for today. Thank you everyone who talked and who attended. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.